Dear friends, 1,500 liberals from across Europe and beyond, welcome to Amsterdam. Welcome of the city which makes money, to say Amsterdam, saying business, but also pleasure. So welcome here to a Congress which will lead us to the 2019 European election. Our next Congress will be in Madrid in Spain, and we will but not yet, not yet. And we will adopt a new manifesto which has been made then under the leadership of Tavi Roivas. And it will be a new manifesto, challenging to all. It will be one of progress and new ways. Ladies and gentlemen, small isn't beautiful in politics, not at all. So we have not only to unite, and we have done so, but we have to win the election in 2019, because they are key. Liberals will conquer Europe. Today, friends, we have 7 prime ministers and 1 to go. And I hope after that, one also not only from the Czech Republic, but from Ireland. And if we say Macron, I would say he is included. He will be part of our family. Dear friends, we have 5 liberal commissioners. But after the 2019 elections, liberals in government should appoint liberal European commissioners. So then we have 10. Dear friends, at this moment we have a strong ALDE group under Guy Verhofstadt with about 70 members. And I've said at our New Year's reception, it should become 100. It is possible. If we see Ciudadanos from Spain, if we see Nova Česna, if we see many others, if we see FDP, who has become a strong party again, it is possible. It's not a dream. Ladies and gentlemen, if we see Macron with En Marche, and he is trying to get into a coalition for the 2019 elections, I don't know whether it's 30 or 40, but at least many seats are to be added. And it will be cooperation between equals. We will not eat Macron, and Macron will not eat us. We are equals, no hostile takeovers, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you. Because Macron has not only said that he wants to reform France, he is doing it. And a reformed France means a reformed Europe. We need France, we need to support Macron, we need to support a revitalized France and European Union. And it is the hope that this new France, being part of the monetary union, of the Eurozone, will adopt the European Copenhagen criteria. That would be the first time. And I think Macron can do it. Let's help him, therefore. The 2019 European elections will not be business as usual. It will mean, and I virtually hope and I mean it for real, it will end the outworn coalition of EPP and SD. Those old crocodiles which have divided the power for too many years. So it's time for a new beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, I would not take the opportunity always to look at the Netherlands, but we are here in Amsterdam. If 20 years ago we would have said that today we would have a government in the Netherlands led by Prime Minister Mark Rutte of VVD with a very strong input from our partner D66. So this is a liberal government. This government is for real, and people would have said 20 years ago, not possible. We shouldn't dream, but this is possible also in the European Union and its member states. Liberals, go ahead. If we look at FDP, and Christian Lindner will join us tomorrow, we see how a party who was on the graveyard, expected to be there, has revitalized itself, and it is the modernizing force in Germany. So we wish this party well, and Germany plays a vital role. And even there, if there would be a große coalition of outworn parties from the left and from the right, so Christian Democrats and Social Democrats, I pray for Germany because I don't like the große coalition. Ladies and gentlemen, we are united as liberals in free trade, free market, a social conscience, and civil liberties. And that means that we can fight because, again, we are united. And we are an opposition, a proposition party which brings together the EU, its institutions, and the member states, because all are democratic institutions. Let us see. I ask also for your confidence for a second mandate, but we will debate this further. It would be an honor to lead, together with Guy Verhofstadt and the member parties, our ALDE into the European election. And the future means leading change, not stagnation. We should be the driver of change in Europe and its member states. Therefore, dear friends, let us go forward together, let us win, and let us be in power for our citizens. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the leader of the ALDE group in the European Parliament, Guy Verhofstadt.
Dear friends, when Hans was talking about Macron, that we will not eat Macron, and that Macron will not eat us, I think eating us with Hans as president is even for Macron a little bit too high, I think. Yeah. Maybe, but I stood here before you, as you know, a year ago, that was in Warsaw, and my opening line at that moment was that 2016 was a horrible year. And maybe you remember that, but I promised that 2017 would be much better. Well, who says politicians never keep their promises? Because 2017, dear friends, has been a great year for us. A great year with a lot of liberal victories. D66 and VVD in the Netherlands, ANO in Czechia, the FDP in Germany, and also, let's say it, in crucial presidential elections, candidates that we have supported, like Van der Bellen in the second round in Austria, like Emmanuel Macron in France, have won the elections. But let's not be blind, naturally. Let's not be naive. The reality of today is that populists, nationalists, fundamentalists of all kinds are still on the march, are still not defeated. I have another feeling, on the contrary. They are becoming, when I look to television, more and more radical, more and more aggressive too. These pictures of Charlottesville in Virginia, these pictures of the streets in Warsaw, in Poland, a few weeks ago, shouting clean blood, white supremacy, with slogans like white Europe or one Christian God. Well, I have to tell you that remembers me the most awful times of European history that we in any way don't want that come back in our times. You have to know one thing, and that will be my message from today, that is that what unites all these people is what Viktor Orban once called the illiberal state. In fact, their aversion towards universal values, liberal values, humanist values, their revulsion against the multicultural and globalized society, and their hate against us. That is what is behind them. And until recently, let's be honest, it wasn't clear that we liberal humanists could win against these forces of the dark. And even today, we cannot be entirely sure of that. But let's be, and let's face it, there are signs that the tide is turning. The last years in almost every European country, new citizens' movements and parties have emerged, have been established. Movements and parties inspired by us, by liberal principles, by humanist values, and principles and values that are universal, pro-European, and reformist. Why reformist? Because it's true that the political system must be shaken up. But, and that is the message of today, instead of reverting, therefore, to what I call murderous ideologies of the past, we must reinvent, we must reinvigorate the liberal and humanist tradition. And there are examples enough. There is Ciudadanos, Hans has already given the whole list on Marsz, Nowoczesna, New Party, Momentum in Hungary, who are present here, our friends from Momentum, Progressive in Slovakia, and then our latest baby in Italy, Più Europa, with Più Europa, you have to say, with the reborn Emma Bonino, and we wish her a lot of success in these difficult elections next year, dear friends. What binds all these movements is one thing. That is, the starting point of all these movements is always the same. That is the analysis that, in fact, dear friends, a political system based on the classical divide between old conservatism and old socialism leads always to standstill and always to stagnation. And secondly, that this standstill, this stagnation can only be broken by one political force, by enlightened, reformist and liberal policies, and not by going back to the destructive forces of the past like some people are doing it. And the last 3 decades, let's say that loud and clear, certainly here, Hans, in Amsterdam, let's be honest, the most open city of maybe the most open country in the world. Well, the last 3 decades, liberalism has in fact transformed our society in an unmistaken and in an unprecedented way. Face it, in the past, institutions and the state were more important than citizens and individuals. And we have risen to a society today of men and women, of young and old, who are in fact freer, more autonomous, more empowered, and at the same time, let's face it, also more prosperous than ever before in history. Putting, in fact, the citizen first, above the system, letting him determine its own future, letting him decide the direction of their own life, not only economically, but also ethically, has become the ambition of our modern age, the creed that no other rival political party can ignore anymore. And it is not a victory that came suddenly, without enemies. The enemies are numerous: nationalists, socialists, communists, conservatives. The failure of nationalism, I think, became clear the day it ended in the horrors of 2 world wars. And the failure of socialism and communism, dear friends, became evident with the gulags of Stalin, and maybe even more disastrous, the great leap forward of Mao. And then the next enemy of our values, conservatism. Conservatives who claim that, in fact, the past was so much better than the present. You know, this glorious past that they like. Back in the days when there were still borders, there were still walls, barbed wire and endless traffic jams at every border crossing. This glorious past, you remember that. Back in the days when women were tied to the kitchen sink and didn't have the same rights as men, and when they were not the master over their own body. This glorious past. The glorious past back in the days when people of the same sex could not enter into a meaningful relationship, let alone marry or build a family. This glorious past back in the days when we solved conflicts between states by waging for war instead of sitting around the table and negotiate. Well, I tell you, for this glorious past, I take a pass, and I don't accept it anymore. There is even more than that. I think even that it is a lie to say that in the past everything was better. The opposite is true. Today, we live on a planet with more than 7 billion humans. It were never so much as today. We do that in 198 countries, of which more than half are democracies, compared to, take for example, 80 years ago, when it was less than a dozen countries that were democratic. We have drastically reduced hunger and war, and in fact we could eradicate both if we really want to do so. And we are in the verge, I think, of major breakthroughs in medicine, in biology, in genetic engineering, and even in neurology that will enable us to cure diseases that are still fatal today. And I think also that we have the technical logics and also the financial means to stop what is maybe, what I could say today, our biggest threat, climate change and global warming. So, in short, it is belief in a better future that drives people and societies forward, and not nostalgia for the past. And let me say it even more bluntly, without our belief in a better future, mankind would still be at the level of about 500 years ago. That is the reality. But our trust in the future, and that has to be our message, Hans, to the outside world, does not mean that we can simply sit back and relax. The belief in progress that inspires our modern liberals is an, how could I call it, an extremely intense and demanding, some would even say a very exhausting endeavor. The answers for the challenges we face, that's the reality. The answers for the challenges we face will not find us. It is we who have to go after the answers. And we know all these questions. How to prevent destruction of the earth, how further to create a renewable economy, how also to do something against inequality, because that is also a fight of liberalism and not only of other ideologies like some are saying. What to do? What to do against this enormous information society with the trillions of data, how to secure our privacy, and how also to take to heart the well-being of all living species on this planet instead of bluntly ignoring them. So we must express ourselves urgently on all these questions, exactly as we did in the past, exactly as liberals introduced open and free markets 200 years ago against widespread poverty, and the same as liberal humanism provided the concept of universal human rights 70 years ago against tyranny. And that brings me, Hans, dear friends, to the final issue in which we have to take leadership, and that's Europe. Yes, it's true. It's one thing. It's true. The European project is today in a much better shape than a year ago. Because let's be honest, after Brexit and after Trump, everyone, including myself, I have to confess you, expected the domino effect. You know that Brexit will be followed by Nexit, and then by Dexit, and then by Frexit. And there are a number of others that I could add to it. But what happened was exactly the opposite. The Eurosceptics have started to lose elections. And let's face it, the turning point came with the victory of Emmanuel Macron. He won the second round of these French elections in an overwhelming way with the slogan that European sovereignty was more important than French sovereignty. I have to tell you, that's a statement that is normally enough to disqualify yourself as French political candidate. Well, not for Macron. He won the elections, and it was Le Pen and an anti-European clique who suffered defeat. But that does not mean one thing, dear friends. And that is that the Eurosceptics have been beaten definitely. On the contrary, I think personally that the fight had just begun. It's true that people now again are voting for pro-European parties, but that's not because they are happy with Europe. They do that because they are afraid of non-Europe. And a Europe that is capable of tackling the major challenges, that is what they want. A European Union that is worthy of its name, because, and that's always my credo, because I think that the real union doesn't exist today. What we call union is in fact still a weak confederation of nation states that is constantly slowed down, constantly paralyzed by this rule of unanimity. What is, in my opinion, the root cause for the fact that we always in Europe react too little, too late. And the second thing, what we get rid of it, is the step-by-step Europe. Step by step is no longer working today. Maybe that worked in the 70s and the 80s, but not today. Not in a globalized world of today. Not with Brexit on our plate. Not with an aggressive Putin at our front, or I have to say, our back door. And not with an unreliable Donald Trump in the White House in Washington. So look, we don't need to learn anything, I think, from Donald Trump, especially not his tweets and the latest tweets, as we know. But from the United States of America, we can still learn a lot. Take, for example, the way the Americans faced the financial crisis. They did it in just 9 months. They have taken all the measures in 9 months. 400 billion for cleaning up the banks, 900 for investments, 1.2 trillion of fresh money to boost the economy. And we in Europe were not able to overcome the crisis in 9 months, even 9 years after the outbreak. We have still not fully done our homework. Our banks are not fully cleaned up, mainly in the south of Europe. The banking union is still unfinished. And it's true, we have an investment fund, 1/3 of the American effort. So what we need urgently to do, and that has to be our message for 2019, is to get rid of these institutional deadlocks. Unanimity, dear friends, has to be abolished the fastest as possible in Europe. That has to be done. And the majority ruling has to become the sole rule. And once also, and that's another point, once we have taken decisions, let's make sure that these decisions are not fake, that action will be taken, that rules will be applied. Be it on budget, on finance, or on values. Be it on the debt crisis in Greece, or be it on the threat on democracy in Malta, in Hungary, and recently in Poland. I think that we liberals need to take the lead in this. The lead in reforming the system, in completing the single market, in establishing a new governance for the Eurozone. And we need to end the deadlock between growth and austerity, North and South, now also France and Germany. It will not be Draghi who will forever save the single currency. So I think, yes, we need a fiscal capacity for a single currency. Yes, we need a new mechanism to manage our debt better together. But let there be no misunderstanding, not as a free lunch, not as a free ride, only if everyone respects the rules. Only if everyone goes forward with the deep reforms we need. And this is not the opinion of our German liberal friends alone. This is the position of the whole liberal and democratic family on that issue, dear friends. Dear friends, I will end my intervention with something to say about two feelings, two attitudes, that I beg you not to give in to in the coming years towards these elections of 2019. And these two feelings, the two attitudes are doubt and fear. Fear for change, as always occurs when societies are in transition. And doubt. Doubt that our plans are doomed to fail, as this seems unrealistic, or at least difficult to achieve. Or critics, my critics, call that castles in the air or castles in the sky. I don't know what the good translation is. Well, from now on, I have to tell you, since the latest State of the Union of Jean-Claude Juncker, I always refer these critics to the Berlaymont, or even better, I have now a better address, to Paris, to the Élysée. Because since Macron's speech at the Sorbonne, our plans, who were once considered as too energetic, too voluntaristic, have suddenly become very realistic. Transnational lists, a small European government, a responsible budget for the Eurozone, a European defense community, finally, more than 50 years after it was launched by our founding fathers. Well, I tell you one thing, fear for change and doubts about our capacity to steer our common future are today, in my opinion, the biggest threats to the European project. Bigger, in fact, than the anti-European and the Eurosceptic parties. These forces in any way will fail because they are on the wrong side of history, dear friends. But let's not have fear. Let's not have doubt. There is a strong new wind that blows over Europe, a new drive, a new energy. And last year, you remember that in Warsaw, I made a bold prediction and it became somewhat reality. So I'm very confident today to make another one this year as well. And it is that in 2019, Hans, ALDE will become one of the two biggest political families in Europe. That is my prediction for next year. We are the only group growing in the polls for the moment. Old conservatives and old socialists will lose millions of voters, as people have, in my opinion, enough of their tired and failed system. In 2019, dear friends, we will bear the fruit of our labor. For years now, Hans and myself were like traveling salesmen. And often we had to take one step back, but never without making 2 steps forward either. And today you see it again. Here with this biggest party conference ever, over 1,500 people will be here. As in this is the case with the Liberals naturally, half in the room, half in the bar, but that's our day. So in any way, today again, we will see a number of new parties coming in. I am anyway confident. I promise you, together with Hans, we will turn the tide in 2019. Thank you very much and success. Thank you.